welcome. My name is James McCann, and thank you for joining us today for From Handy to Angi, the past, present, and future of an entrepreneur's journey. Make sure to join the conversation online on Twitter and Facebook at Business Show IRL, and be sure to use the hashtag Rebooting Ireland. So thanks very much, Oisin, for joining us today. I might just start off with a brief introduction, and then we can take things from there. So Oisin, if anyone doesn't know him, is a Rathcoole native and a Trinity College graduate who jumped across the pond to study at Harvard Business School, where afterwards, beforehand, I don't even think anyone graduates from Harvard Business School anymore. They just get straight into to entrepreneurship. But he established Handy in 2012 with his co-founder, Umang Dua, and the pair, 6 years later, after I think more than 100 million raised and 200 employees, Handy was acquired by Angi Home Services and now renamed Angi under your stewardship, Oisin. No more than 2 years later, and you're CEO of a NASDAQ listed company. So I suppose my first question is, have you slept in the last 10 years?
I have, yeah. I'm not getting all the sleep I'd like right now. I've got a little 10-day-old baby boy who's definitely eaten up a little bit of sleep in the last 10 days. But other than that, yeah, no, I think it's really important to sleep. Hey, it's critical. How could I do anything if I didn't get a good night's sleep?
Yeah, for sure. Well, look, it's good to hear. I don't know how you do it, but look, I mean, the first question I have for you, and this round, obviously, your past, you've tended to make these amazing leaps throughout your career. Obviously, you started off many years ago with My Candidate and working with Paddy Cosgrave and other businesses before you even got to Handy. You then, after Trinity, you jump across the pond. You start off at Harvard, and you see this opportunity. And just as you've constantly grown your business and moved to the next phase, a lot of entrepreneurs can often feel limited by different parts of their career. I often hear a lot of founders being told that by boards or whatever, that look, it's time to go. We need to bring somebody else in to help scale the business. How have you managed from the very early days to now to navigate those leaps and get from one place to another?
Look, I think within each of the opportunities that I've been fortunate enough to be a part of, I've really just focused in a very clear way on what's the ultimate mission, what's the goal, what's the thing that we're trying to do. And within Handy, it was this idea that to take care of your home. It shouldn't be so hard to find a cleaner or find a plumber or find a handyman. It shouldn't be this really clunky, messy process to figure out how to get someone to, fix a broken toilet or mount a TV on a wall or put in a new light fitting. And once I started to get into that and started to think about the problem, it was really clear that it was this really huge opportunity. And when you've got that enormous opportunity, I didn't want to give up on it. And at every point, obviously, from raising a couple of $1 million to, first people joining the team, to scaling to multiple cities, to partnerships with major retailers, to, ultimately selling the business and, taking on a larger role within the parent company. Obviously, there's a ton to learn. And the thing I've kept asking myself is, who can I go to? How can I learn whatever the next step is? How can I figure out how to get advice from the people who are best in class at this particular topic? And I'll give an example. I think it was last week or the week before, we were fortunate to have one of the founders of Airbnb come and talk to us at Angi about culture. And that was something that, I was very, very focused on. Obviously, we built a very strong set of values, set of culture in Handy early on. And now it's about, how do you scale that culture? How do you figure out how to take the norms of a couple of hundred people and create norms of behavior around, 4,000 or 5,000 people that work at Angi today. And, we brought in Nate and we spent some time with them. Nate, one of the Airbnb founders. And I asked him very directly, asked him a bunch of questions. And instead of doing it, in a one-on-one conversation, we actually did it as a fireside in front of the whole organization to try and learn and to try and figure out, like, how do you do that? I think that's a good example of, where I've found inspiration from. It's go to people who are best in class, who really are setting themselves apart on that particular topic, and learn from them. And I think that's served me. I've been fortunate. That served me well.
Yeah, no, it's a fascinating kind of journey there. You spoke about, the focus and keeping on the mission, and then leveraging that network and mentorship, and just kind of, I suppose, as the problem scale, just having to scale with them through whatever means you can. So, you've transitioned from, being effectively a startup founder to a CEO of a NASDAQ listed company. So you've really gone from, kind of those very beginnings to what is now an establishment, or an established company and brand. So what would you say are the similarities between startup business building, and I suppose where you're at now in terms of that NASDAQ listed company and Angi, and what's different? So what's similar and what's different?
Look, on the one hand, you look at it and you think there's thousands of people, $1 billion+ of revenue. This company's got scale. On the other hand, it's tiny. It's, we're in a market that is $500 billion, which, you think of markets that are $500 billion. There's not many of them out there. It's a $500 billion market in taking care of your home. And on the one hand, yeah, we're a large established player in the market. On the other hand, even at $1.5 billion of revenue, we're tiny relative to the overall market. So I very much hope to bring that attitude and that mentality of, hey, we've got a whole market we can go after. This problem of how to take care of your home isn't even nearly solved. We're at like the first part of the inning of how to help people transition from this old school way of taking care of their home into a modern, digitally enabled way of, getting a handyman, a plumber, a cleaner, getting a deck built, getting a fence put around your home, dealing with a HVAC problem. It's important that we don't sit back and say, oh, we've got this large NASDAQ listed company. And instead we say, we're tiny relative to this market. And we bring that attitude and that approach every single day of, how do we make sure we're investing back into the customer experience? How do we make sure we're investing back into the pro experience? How do we make sure we're building a culture, that we're building a way of working and a way of approaching the problem that reminds us every single day not to think about how do we optimize this last little thing for a 1% or 2%, but instead to remind ourselves that we have less than 1% of the market, and that there is, 90+% of the market is still in this very old school way of taking care of your home. And we can go after that, and we can solve a real customer pain point. We can make it easier for people to love where they live. And we can hopefully build Angi into the home for everything home if we do it right.
That's a really, really fascinating insight. It leads to another question I had, which is, for like, you're probably one of the youngest CEOs now, for a NASDAQ listed company, and I wonder, is this a sign that kind of Wall Street America, the S&P and NASDAQ are going to start looking at founders like yourself, who have that vision, that they can see the potential for these companies? Do you think that's going to be a direction we will see more companies go?
Look, I think you've got more companies coming to market now through the SPACs that are taking companies that probably would have stayed private longer. I think you've got more SPACs now than ever before. I think there's hundreds of them, billions and billions of dollars in capital that is bringing companies to market. And I don't think those companies are going to change CEOs as they go public. The vast majority of them are companies that are going to maintain their CEO, maintain their leadership team as they go through this transition into public markets. So I'm really excited to see these mission-led organizations. I think it's really important to have a mission-led company. I think it leads to better outcomes. I think it creates the space for people to make better decisions. It creates the space to align the team. And then you couple that mission with a great set of values, and it explains to people how to work. It explains to them how to make decisions. It explains where the tension is. And I think the companies that have grown up in the last, 5, 10+ years, they're more likely to have a stronger mission. They're more likely to have values than, you rewind 30, 40 years ago. It was less likely that the organizations at that time had those things. And I think it is it's really exciting to see these very mission focused organizations scale and become an important part of the economy.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, we're facing into, you know, another transitionary period. I think a year ago when the whole world went into lockdown, it was a massive shock. We're actually coming to close to the second shock, which is actually coming out of that, and a whole new world. You know, and you know, you spoke about there that you know, right now Angi, you know, accounts for 1% of the marketplace. I would imagine, you know, over the last 12 months, that marketplace has grown even further as people have started to bring their work life into the home and start to see how that transitions. You know, how do you see home services and that whole industry evolving over the next, you know, 5-10 years?
Look, I think there's been this huge focus on the home over the last year,
Mm.
and I think you've seen it, you know, across the world. People have spent more time at home. They've invested in their homes. They've thought about, you know, how to make them more work compatible. Um, I think there are certain parts of that that are incredibly enduring. I think the first one is this shift to online. So more and more people are turning online, whether it's for groceries, whether it's to buy hard goods, whether it's to buy home goods, whether it's to buy anything. People are going online much, much, much more than going to a physical store. And that's an enduring behavioral trend. That's not going to flip just because, you know, we all get vaxxed. And, you know, I think, you know, hopefully we're well on our way to that soon. But I think just because that, you know, that happens, we're not going to flip back to a non-online way of work, of buying. I think the second is this shift towards a more, look, we can debate whether it's an office first environment or remote first environment. There's a lot of conversation about that. I think the thing that is more enduring within that is a shift to a more flexible way of work. And I think we're going to be more accommodating of people working either remotely on a part-time basis, on a full-time basis. And that's going to drive real change in how people think about structuring their lives, whether they need to have a base in the city, whether they need to have a base in the suburbs, whether they can live, you know, in different parts of the world. And the raw math is the more square feet or square meters you have per person in terms of how they live, the more demand you have for taking care of your home. Like that's just like straight math.
Yeah.
The only other thing I'd say on this is when you think through the constraints of the last few years, there's been a real constraint on a few different aspects of life. One is home buying. So the inventory levels, particularly here in the US, are at near all-time lows. People have just been afraid to bring homes to market because they didn't want folks trepping through their homes. And that's obviously understandable. So I think there's this huge pent-up demand. We also have saving levels at all-time highs in the US. I think they're similar in Ireland, where saving levels are very high right now. There's this pent-up demand for first-time homes in particular. And there's a whole pile of other things that go along with that, where a bunch of weddings have been postponed, a bunch of births have been postponed. Like we're in this like almost like pause was pressed for a certain amount of time. And we're going to see that unwind, right? People are all those weddings, not all those weddings, a lot of those weddings that were paused, they're going to happen. And the associated activity of first child, first time home buyer, all the customization of your home that you do the first time you own one, when you've always been a renter and you couldn't paint your home and, you know, you couldn't do your kitchen the way you wanted, all that's going to unlock. And I think we're going to see this, you know, this real hunger and shift towards first time buyer activity as the economy reopens. And I think those three things are probably going to set the tone for what the economy does over the next, call it 24, 36 months, as we think about like getting back to a post-vaccine world.
Yeah. No, fascinating insights. And yeah, look, I think you're right. There's a lot of pent up demand there that's just going to, flood and hit the market, which is exciting times for you guys. You'd be looking out for that. But so just in terms of kind of like scaling companies, of which you have a lot of experience. I read in a Trinity College article you gave a good few years ago that in the early days of Handy, one of the glitches, you ended up taking up too many orders, and you had to get everyone together, the engineers, yourself, the whole lot, and get your hands dirty, get stuck in. What are the lessons that you would give to early stage founders now when looking to scale their companies? There's a lot of hype around it, but what are the practical things that they need to watch out for?
Look, I think it's important to know why you're scaling, right? We're in this world now where scale and growth and venture capital and all that fun stuff it's glamorized, right? There's this sense of excitement around it. And I think the first thing you got to ask yourself is why? Is this the business? Is this a marketplace? Is this an experience that actually warrants scale? And that's like a real question to ask before you go at this. And as an example, like of why it mattered for Handy to get to scale, it was about density. So with Handy, you would come to the site and you would try and book a handyman tomorrow at 9 a.m. If we had a handyman available at 9 a.m., good chance you'd book. If we said, sorry, we don't have one available at 9, but we can do 2, or actually we can't do tomorrow, we can do the next day, your probability of booking went way down. And on the other side of the platform, if you were a handyman and you came and you're like, great, looking for work, and you logged in and you saw 2 jobs available tomorrow versus seeing no jobs tomorrow and 5 the next day, your probability, was much higher if we could get you work immediately. So there's this real value from density in the platform where customers drive bookings, bookings drive pros drive availability, and it comes all the way back around. So the first thing for founders is to really understand whether the business is truly better with scale. And I don't mean better like you just take your fixed cost and you amortize them and the business is a little bit cheaper. I mean, it's actually a better experience for customers. Yeah, okay. And if you align on that and you're like, yes, this is truly a better experience for customers if we have more scale, not just it makes more money for you, but it actually is a better experience for your customers, then you got to figure out what you need to do to make that work. And you focus as narrowly as you possibly can on what it is that you need to do. And for us, as an example, it was not about saying, hey, how do we get more cleaners or handyman everywhere? It was about, how do we get more cleaners and handyman in Boston? Because the customers in Boston, they don't care whether you've got a great experience in Denver or in Portland. They care about Boston. And be really narrow with your definition of what you're trying to optimize for so that you can put all your energy and resource into that thing to make the experience better for your actual customers today rather than your prospective customers tomorrow.
Good stuff. And look, last question before we run out of time. What's next for Oisin Hanrahan?
Look, we've got this huge mission. We think home is, one of the most important places on earth. We've got this amazing opportunity, huge market. We want to help people everywhere love where they live. We want to build Angi into this home for everything home. And we're just getting started. I mean, I think we're at a place where we've rolled out a mission, we're rolling out values, we're restructuring the organization, we're putting our customer first, we're investing a huge amount in product and engineering and the customer experience. I think we're still just getting started on this opportunity. I'm really excited to keep doing that. I think about where else I'm putting time. Obviously, I make small investments into other startups. I got a huge amount of enjoyment and passion and energy out of that. And I'm really excited to keep building Angi. I think the opportunity has never been bigger. And I think if we get this right, we'll have built something that is truly remarkable. If we get this right, we'll have built something that is a multi-generational category changing business that will make people's lives materially better, both our customers and our pros. So I'm really excited to keep doing that.
And look, fantastic. And look, we're all rooting for you back here in terms of your success over in New York. And listen, thanks very much for your time and joining us here today. And you look, best luck for the future.
Thanks so much.
Take care.